The old house stood on a hill overlooking a small, forgotten town. It had been empty for years, a relic of a time long past. Locals whispered tales of the family who had lived there, a family that vanished without a trace one stormy night. Sarah, a young journalist with a penchant for the macabre, had come to investigate. Armed with a camera and a healthy dose of skepticism, she entered the creaking gates, the iron groaning in protest. The air inside the grounds was heavy, still, and unnaturally cold. The house itself was a Gothic masterpiece, its dark stone walls draped in ivy, its windows like vacant eyes staring out into the twilight. Sarah pushed open the heavy oak door, a gust of dust and decay greeting her. The interior was a time capsule of forgotten lives. Cobwebs hung like tattered lace, and the silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional creak of the house settling. She moved through the downstairs rooms, her footsteps echoing on the bare floorboards. A grand staircase led to the upper floors, its banister carved with grotesque gargoyles. In the drawing room, a piano sat silently, its keys yellowed and chipped. Sarah imagined phantom melodies filling the air, a ghostly waltz played for an audience of none. As she ascended the stairs, a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature snaked up her spine. The air grew colder with each step. On the landing, a long, dark corridor stretched out before her, lined with closed doors. Her heart pounded against her ribs. She chose the first door on her left. It opened into what must have been a nursery. A rocking horse stood frozen mid-rock, its painted eyes wide and unnerving. A doll lay on the floor, its porcelain face cracked, one button eye missing, giving it a sinister, knowing stare. Sarah felt an overwhelming sense of sadness and dread wash over her. She raised her camera, the click of the shutters sounding like a gunshot in the oppressive silence. She moved to the next room, a bedroom, sparsely furnished. A large ornate mirror hung on the wall. As Sarah approached it, her reflection seemed to flicker, momentarily replaced by a gaunt, pale face with hollow eyes. She recoiled, her breath catching in her throat. Shaking her head, she dismissed it as a trick of the light, a product of her overactive imagination. The last door at the end of the corridor was slightly ajar. A faint light seemed to emanate from within. Curiosity overriding her growing fear, Sarah pushed it open. It was a study filled with bookshelves, a large desk, and a fireplace. On the desk lay an open journal. She approached it cautiously. The handwriting was elegant, looping, but increasingly frantic. It was the diary of the woman who had lived here, Eleanor. Sarah began to read. The early entries spoke of a happy life, of love and family. But then the tone shifted. Eleanor wrote of strange occurrences, of whispers in the walls, of shadows that moved when no one was there. She described a growing sense of unease, a feeling of being watched. The entries became more desperate. Eleanor wrote of her children, of how they were changing. They spoke in hushed tones to unseen companions, their laughter turning to unnerving giggles. Her husband, once a loving man, became distant, withdrawn, his eyes holding a vacant, faraway look. The final entry was chilling. It was scrawled, almost illegible. Eleanor wrote of a darkness that had consumed her family, a malevolent entity that had taken root in the house, in their souls. She spoke of a desperate attempt to escape, a frantic flight into the storm. The entry ended abruptly, a single jagged line trailing off the page. As Sarah finished reading, a faint sound reached her ears. A child's laughter, high-pitched and eerie, seemed to come from the hallway. Her blood ran cold. She looked up from the journal, her eyes darting towards the doorway. The laughter grew louder, closer. It was no longer a sound of joy, but of something ancient and cruel. Sarah scrambled back from the desk, her camera dropping to the floor with a thud. She turned and fled the study, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She raced down the corridor, the laughter echoing behind her, seeming to mock her terror. She reached the top of the stairs, her legs trembling. As she started to descend, she saw them. Standing at the foot of the stairs were three figures, small childlike figures, their faces obscured by shadow. But their eyes, glowing with an unnatural luminescence, were fixed on her. They didn't move, but the air around them crackled with an unseen energy. Sarah froze, trapped between the spectral children and the oppressive silence of the house. The laughter subsided, replaced by a low, guttural whisper that seemed to slither from the shadows. "You shouldn't have come here," the whisper hissed. Sarah finally found her voice, a strangled cry. She turned and ran back up the stairs, back towards the nursery. She slammed the door shut, her hands fumbling with the lock. She leaned against it, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The laughter started again, this time from inside the room. Sarah spun around. The rocking horse began to rock, slowly at first, then faster, its wooden frame groaning. The doll on the floor sat up, its cracked face turning towards her, its single-button eye seeming to bore into her soul. A cold dread washed over Sarah. She was not alone. The house was not empty. It was filled with the echoes of a tragedy, with the lingering presence of something that had been waiting patiently for someone new to torment. She looked at the mirror again. Her reflection was there, but behind her a small, shadowy figure was beginning to materialize, its form indistinct, yet undeniably menacing. It reached out a spectral hand, its fingers long and skeletal, towards her. Sarah screamed, a primal sound of pure terror. The last thing she saw before the darkness consumed her was her own terrified reflection, superimposed with the gaping maw of the entity that had claimed the house and its inhabitants long ago.